Welcome to Forte Catholic. This is your joyful and excited host, Taylor Schroll, coming to you live from Red Sea Radio in College Station, Texas. If you have been with me forever, congratulations on sticking it out. If you're a new listener, I'd love to have you. It's great to be here with all of you guys here tonight, talking into a microphone and having people listen to me. It's great to know that I'm not alone. So, most of you that have listened before know that I always begin and end the show the same way, with that big what's up. The whole point of Forte Catholic is that I'm the loud Catholic. That's kind of the thing. So I start off loud and, we just go from there. So I was calling a good friend of mine who's been on the show before. His name's Adam Minahan from the Catholic Man Show. And when I called him this morning, he started off the conversation by saying, "What's up?" and trying to imitate my intro. And I have to give him a solid 7 out of 10. He tried, and I really, really appreciated it. But we have another person who would like to welcome you to the show. You may have heard this before, but I think it's the cutest thing in the world. It's my daughter introing the Forte Catholic show. Maggie, say, "Welcome to Forte Catholic."
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's my daughter. So it's just great to be here with you. This show airs live in Bryan College Station area, in Waco, and in Palestine, Texas. Not Palestine, like the place in the Old Testament. I don't know if it's still a place, but Palestine, Texas. So if you are listening, wherever you're listening, however you're listening, whether live in any of those places or on the podcast, thanks for being with me today. We've got a great show here for you tonight. I have people texting me what to say on the show, and it's absolutely hilarious. Thanks, General Manager. He also says that my daughter's very cute. So I always love interaction with the show. So if you would ever like to ask a question of the show, you can always do so on Facebook.com/Forte Catholic. You can go on Twitter at Taylor Schroll. My last name is German, so it's SCHROLL. And I'd love to answer your questions. And speaking of those questions, a couple of days ago, I asked people on Facebook and on Twitter what questions you had for the show. I did this for 2 reasons. Number one, this show is for you. And some of you that know me know that I struggle with pride, but that's not why I do this show. I like sharing the faith with people. I like helping people grow in their faith and helping people make connections to take the next step in their faith. So one of the big ways to do that is to answer questions that people actually have, because all of us have questions that are holding us back from perfect union with God. I don't understand this, I don't understand this. So getting answers to those questions can actually be very helpful. One of my professors in grad school always said that every new thing that we learn about God is another reason to love him. And these questions, these things that we struggle with, can be inhibitors to our faith. But if we actually ask these tough questions and get, semi-decent answers, which is what I'm going to try to do, they can help spur us along in our faith. So we're going to jump into some of those here in this first segment. In the second segment, we're going to be talking to a good friend of mine from San Antonio, Brother Sean Stilson of the Brothers of the Beloved Disciple. I'm going to try to say that throughout the show without stuttering, that sort of thing. I've done this pretty often on the show. For those of you listening, try to say Brothers of the Beloved Disciple 10 times fast. Right now. Ready, set, go. All of you just messed up. Literally all of you have already messed up. My producer tried to do it, and he got through about 2 and then just laughed at himself. So he's going to come on the show. He is in formation into the priesthood. He's going to become a priest here in the next year. And so I want to talk to him about his time in the his time in preparation for the priesthood, what that looks like, what their daily life looks like, what he's most excited about to be a priest, that sort of thing. And then in the third segment, I'm going to answer some more of your questions, things like, I don't get anything out of Mass, why should I go? Does Taylor wear boxers or briefs? The important questions, these kinds of things. We're going to get to the bottom of it. So the first question that I want to answer is from a good friend of the station, Katka Perez. She is a lot of fun. She's a tremendous volunteer at with the station and throughout the big part of the Catholic community within this area. And she has a lot of questions, all kind of around the main point of, is the church a business or is it something different? So, is the church a business? I'm going to give the Catholic answer and say yes and no. Right? So there are some aspects of the church that have to be a business, but let's start with the biggest point first. The church, first and foremost, is a mission. It's the body of Christ sent on a mission to spread and grow the body of Christ. The church is Jesus' body, and the church's job is to evangelize and to make disciples. That's what Christ called us to do. He gave us the great commission. He said, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all that I've commanded." It's like that's what our mission as the church is. So that's first and foremost who we are as a church. Now, does the church have some functions of a business? Absolutely. So there are things that we have to do like on a parish level, where the parish has finances. The parish needs a business administrator, somebody that runs the numbers, because people are tithing and giving of their hard-earned money, giving back to the Lord. So the church has to be good stewards of those things. Has to hire people to further the mission, has to hire youth ministers and DREs and parish secretaries and accountants and maintenance people and all these people, right? So there are some parts of this that where every parish functions kind of like a small business. Unless you're a big parish, and then I guess you're a medium-sized business, right? But there are some business aspects, and from coming from someone who works in the church, like there are some things that are very business-like. We have to make budgets. We have to meet budgets. We have to have professionalism, all these sorts of things. But with all the professionalism and all the things the business things that we have to take care of, we have to always remind ourselves what our actual mission is. So are we mission driven or are we budget driven? Like our main call as people who work in the church, or just as Catholics, as Christians, our main call is to spread the good news of Jesus. Now, to do that, you have to have money. Like, I know this very, very well. I'm a missionary. So 80% of the money that I make comes from monthly donors from people, friends, family, people that I've come in contact with, that sort of thing. Like, I couldn't continue in ministry if I didn't have the financial things that I need to take care of my family, because my first vocation is as a husband and a father. So I need to take care of them so that we're not, homeless. That would not be fun. And the same thing on a parish level. And like for those who are in ministry, who have done a lot of volunteering at the church, you know that this is always a constant struggle at parishes. It's like, we want to do this good thing, but do we have the money to do it? So always being able to take our budget, take the business aspects of the church, and say, how is this serving the furthering of the church? The furthering of the mission of Christ. So along this, she also asks, so are we volunteers or employees? So that's another good question, right? Because working in ministry, like I do youth ministry, and we have volunteers that help us out all the time. Some volunteers are like, they're going to come and help serve a meal once a semester or a few times a semester. But we also have these things called core teams, and it's like kind of our leadership, our adults that are going to be involved in the lives of these young people, helping to lead discussion groups or give talks or just be a leader in these young people's lives. And are they volunteering their time? Absolutely. Like, they don't get paid for that. They're doing that as, tithing of their time, giving of their time to go back and serve. But here's the deal. If the church is counting on you to volunteer, if you say, I'm going to be there every week, or, relatively, if you're sick or you have to go out of town or whatever, but if you're committed to be there, then you're committed to the youth ministry, you're committed to the parish, you're committed to those kids in your small group, then it's actually a big deal if you're not there. So again, there's not this clear-cut answer. It's like, yes, we are volunteers. We are volunteering and serving and giving of our time. But there are some expectations that would be the same as an employee of a business. Like if you say you're going to, this is just being a person of your word. If you say that you're going to be there, then you should be there, or at least let somebody know that you're not going to be there. And then, so like that's on the volunteer side, but then also as people in ministry, whether you're in full-time ministry or you part-time ministry, or you're just helping out, that sort of thing, kind of a permanent volunteer, it's like, yes, everything that I do is a service to the church. Not everything I do, but like when I'm at work and the things that I'm doing for work, it's like, you know, I'm there to serve the church, to serve Christ. But there are still like expectations that I need. Like I still have, you know, to work a certain amount of hours. I still need to, you know, meet my deadlines and these types of things. So there are some employee aspects of it. But I think getting to the heart of the question of, you know, is it a church or a business? Are we volunteers or employees? The most important thing in all of this is that we are called to serve Christ. And if we have committed to do so, then we should take that commitment seriously. And then if it's really not working out, then maybe discerning, moving out and phasing out and that sort of thing. The next thing she asks about, and she says, let's talk about the psychological and evangelical impact that the bureaucracy in the church brings. Like, how do we avoid being a company swayed by the amount of paperwork and keep focused on Christ at the church? So we've kind of tackled some of this, but bureaucracy in the church, or church politics, as it's often known, from parish staffs and also like just people in the parish, you often know the parish politics. You know, you can't say this to this person, or you can't do that, or whatever your parish politics is. I think we've all experienced it in some way. First of all, like, you have to know that the struggle is real. Like we all get it. Most of us have experienced it, and I think the biggest thing that we have to do when we encounter bureaucracy or we encounter church politics, and I'm not perfect at this. I've been around church politics and I haven't done 100% what I'm about to say. But the biggest thing we have to ask ourselves is, how can I be Christ in this situation? So let's say you're a parishioner at your parish, and the pastor or the parish staff or whoever is leading these church politics are not being swayed. They're not listening, all these kinds of things. How can you lead from behind? How can you be Christ in the situation? Maybe it's something grand and big where you step up and you say something like, this needs to be addressed. We need to do something about this. Or maybe it's you still serving as Christ is calling you to, and not giving into the church politics, not entering into that gossip, and really being able to still be Christ to people even when they're being ugly to you. And then another thing that she asks about church being a business or something else, she recalls that she heard something from the prophecies of Our Lady of Fatima about a priest having too much office work and no time for holy things. And I think we see this a lot. I've seen this a lot working in parishes. It's like our parish priests are overworked. They're often very exhausted. And we as a parish staff and we as a parish community often expect way too much from them. We expect them to be the giver of all the sacraments. We expect them to be available 24/7. We expect them to have incredible business acumen, to be the business administrator of the parish. We expect them to be completely pastoral. We expect them to be counselors. We expect them to have insight into everybody's lives. We expect them to memorize the names of everybody in the parish. Like, we expect so much from them. And so often they get bogged down with office work, with meetings, with people asking them to be involved in every little detail of the parish, and they don't have time to do what they were actually called to do. And In our next segment, we're going to have Brother Sean Stilson on to talk about what a priest is actually called to do, what he's learned in his preparation to be a priest, and how what the priesthood should look like, and how we as lay people, as your everyday parishioner or somebody working or serving in the parish, how can we be of best service to our priests? So before we do that, to kind of end this conversation, I want to just take a quick look at this next Sunday's reading, because as I was prepping for this, I was like, this is a tough subject, so I want to see like where the Spirit's leading me. And then a lot of times we do like the daily readings of like today, but this is next Sunday's, and it's from Matthew chapter 13. It says, Jesus proposed another parable to the crowd, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be likened to a man who sowed good seed in his field. While everyone was asleep, his enemy came and sowed weeds all through the wheat and then went off. When the crop grew and bore fruit, the weeds appeared as well. The slaves of the householder came to him and said, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where have the weeds come from? He answered, an enemy has done this. His slaves said to him, do you want us to go and pull them up? He replied, no, if you pull up the weeds, you might uproot the wheat along with them. Let them grow together until harvest. Then at harvest time, I will say to the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles for burning, but gather the wheat into my barn. So that's the first paragraph or so of the gospel. It's a long one this weekend. There's a short version, so maybe your pastor will read that one. But I wanted to read that because like Jesus explains the parable and he's like actually talking about people. But I think within church politics, within church bureaucracy, or however we want to help this situation, help it to improve, this gospel is actually very timely for us. Because in every individual, in you, in me, in the people running the church politics, and the people running the bureaucracy, in all of us, there are wheat, there's good things growing in us, and there are weeds, there are bad things growing in us. And like God sometimes will allow those things to grow together. And at some point, the weeds and the good and the bad will be separated. But until then, we have to continue growing on the good things and continue to trust that the Lord will lead us. So we'll be right back here in just a second to talk with Brother Sean Stilson from the Brothers of the Beloved Disciple. I did it. All right, we are back for segment 2 of Forte Catholic. We are pumping out the content today, having a lot of fun, airing a live show and pre-recording for next week all at the same time. But we're focused on right now. So right now, I have a good friend of mine, Brother Sean Stilson, on the line. Brother Sean, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. So just a little bit of backstory. Brother Sean and I have known each other for quite some time, back when I was in college, so from 2008 to 2012. So we met sometime in there, doing ministry together and serving together. We went to the same parish and all that sort of thing. And what year did you enter your formation for the priesthood?
I entered in 2010, right after graduating from college.
Okay, cool. So right around that time, which means you're about 2 years older than me, we met then, and we actually reconnected at a wedding this past weekend for a mutual friend of ours in San Antonio. It was great catching up with you, and we were talking about the show, and then you were like, oh yeah, how do you get your guests? And I'm like this. Hey, you want to come on my show?
And I was surprised.
You were surprised. You were surprised. This is your first time on radio. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so you're doing absolutely fantastic so far. You have not messed up once yet. So we want to have you to come on to talk about your preparation for the priesthood, what a priest is called to do. So let's start there right at the beginning. You already kind of answered how long you've been, the year that you started preparation, but how long is the preparation in total for you to become a priest?
Well, generally, for someone to become a priest, they have to have a bachelor's degree in something, it helps if it's in philosophy, because we have to take about 30 hours of philosophy first. And then
Wow.
after that, we get a master's of divinity, which takes either 4 or 5 years, depending on where you're at. And the master's of divinity is mainly theology and ministry training.
And so you've been in for 7 or 8 years? How long has it been for you?
Yeah, about 7 or 8 years, and I've got 1 year left of seminary.
That's so exciting, man. I can remember when you started. So the fact that it's been that long, first of all, makes me feel very old, but also it's just it's so intense and so interesting, like how long people are formed. Because a lot of times for, like, quote unquote normal jobs, I don't want to say the priesthood isn't normal, but like, most people's jobs, they go to school for 2 years or 4 years or maybe even 6, and they're like experts in their field, and priests go for a very long time. And you are getting very close to the end of your formation, and you are going to be a priest very soon. So
God willing.
Yeah, God willing. Hopefully they don't kick you out. You're a pretty good dude. Yeah. I don't think they'll kick you out. But
I hope not.
I think one thing that would be interesting for people to hear is not only the length of the preparation for the priesthood, but what does the preparation to be a priest actually look like? You kind of mentioned some of the classes, but what does the formation look like for those of us who have not ever done it?
So it is a lot of academic classes, mainly learning about the faith, learning about the Bible, the history of the church, what we believe and why. But also, I guess what I didn't anticipate is there's a lot of ministry involved in preparing. So we visit hospitals or prisons, or lead an RCIA process, or do some form of counseling, things like that, work in a parish. And we are sort of supervised in that, and have time to reflect and have to write reports and get feedback, which is a very exhausting process. It's a lot of introspection, looking in yourself, seeing, why did I react this way in this ministry circumstance, or why do I like this ministry, why do I hate that kind of ministry. So it is a lot of ministry, which makes sense because we're preparing for ministry. We're not preparing to be scholars.
Well, that's really neat, that connection between what you're learning and then actually attempting to go out and do it, and to grow not only, like you said, in your knowledge, but also your the practicality of using that knowledge to help people grow. What are you most excited about being a priest? Using, like, all this time that you've spent, you must be pretty excited about it. So what's the biggest thing or two that you're excited about?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I'm excited to be done with school. But
I bet.
But really, I think what I'm looking forward to most is being a representative of the Catholic Church in an official capacity, to really speak on behalf of the Church, especially to those who are not members of the Church, whether that's Protestants, atheists, people who are spiritual but not religious. I really feel a great interest, a great call to share the faith with those who maybe have not heard it or haven't heard it explained well, in order to invite them into the Catholic Church. And I think that's probably what interests me most, and what I feel called to do, is really explain the faith in a clear, convincing manner.
And that's such an interesting answer. And we were talking a little bit about this at the wedding, yelling over the wedding party music and all these things.
Right.
And I was so intrigued by that, because so often myself and other Catholics, or even other non-Catholics, will look at Catholic priests and be like, okay, what is their job? And I think a lot of people would say their job is to minister to Catholics, to administer the sacraments, to share the faith with Catholics. And I don't think many people think of priests as representatives of the church to the outside world, to people who aren't practicing Catholic. So I find that so intriguing, that is like the biggest thing that's tugging on your heart. Why do you think there's that tug for you whenever the norm, or at least the perceived norm, is that a Catholic priest are for Catholics?
Well, I would definitely say the primary calling of most priests is to serve Catholics, to celebrate the sacraments, give counseling, explain the faith, and preach to those who are Catholic. But I also think the church needs official representatives to those outside the church, because we need new members. We need to bring people in. And as for why is that what I feel primarily called to do, I certainly do feel called to serve Catholics. I am a Catholic. I love Catholics.
And you're going to be
But
priest, so that's probably a good thing to have in
right,
your back
yeah,
pocket somewhere.
right, yeah. Uh, but I guess I can't explain it too well except to say that's how God designed me. I have a great love for truth. Maybe that's the main thing is um, when I'm surrounded by Catholics, we all believe the same things already. Whereas when I'm with people who are not Catholic, that's a great opportunity to share the truth. And because I love truth so much and have a great passion for explaining it, that really can be acted out in a fuller way with those who don't believe what we believe. So maybe that's why I feel so attracted to being an evangelist, really.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I'm glad you said that because so many people are called to different things. We're not all called to be altar servers. We're not all called to be priests. We're not all called to be lectors. But like between among the body of Christ, we're all called to something. If we answer that call, then good things are going to happen. So I'm glad that that's your call, and I think you're going to be absolutely great at it just from knowing you for all these years. In your studies and in your preparation and your prayer and your ministry up to this point, what have you learned and what can you share with us about what being a priest truly means? Because I think a lot of us have misconceptions about what the priesthood is just from what we've seen or what we haven't seen, that sort of thing. So what's like been the most interesting thing for you in your formation about what a priest is actually supposed called to do, what he's supposed to be?
That's a really good question. I think actually this past year we had a class on the whole history of the priesthood, and that really opened my eyes and helped me to appreciate the priesthood more because what we learned about is that what we call a priest in the early church was called a presbyter, in Greek presbyteros, which meant elder. So it referred to someone who was an elder in their community, a leader. And really, a priest has three roles. An elder has three roles: to be priest, prophet, and king. And so that priest role is mainly focused on leading worship, celebrating the sacraments. The prophet role is more focused on the word, on preaching the word of God and teaching the faith. And then that king role is about leadership, about uh, really helping, especially lay people, to realize what their gifts are, to grow in those gifts, and to build up the body of Christ. And so a priest is called to be sort of a coordinator of all these gifts in the local church.
And that last part's so very intriguing. In the last segment, we were talking about church bureaucracy. Is the church a business or is it something else? And you were talking about that king role. And most of the time when you think king, you think leader, like royalty. We're going to bow down to this guy. He's awesome. But you explained
Right.
king like Jesus was king, that he is the servant. He's the one calling people to share their gifts. And I think a lot of, like, I've been around a lot of priests, and some of them are most of them, I would say the large majority, are very servant leaders like Jesus because, they've had years and years of practice, and grace of the sacraments and all these things to be closer to Jesus. But every now and then you find somebody who does feel kind of like a king in the more traditional sense. So
Right.
it's so great that you share that you've learned that, and that you've been prepared to coordinate those gifts and help us lay people out.
Right. The priesthood does not exist for the sake of priests. It exists to help lay people. And so definitely we have to see ourselves as servants first before we're leaders.
So, like, on a practical level, like living out the priest, prophet, and king, what do you think your role as a priest will be in the day to day? How will you fill out those three roles in the day to day things at the parish or however you're serving?
So, um, the so I will be most likely working in a parish setting, at least at first. And so I guess the priestly role, I'll be celebrating masses, hearing confessions, celebrating sacraments like the anointing of the sick or baptisms. The prophet role, I think, mainly encompasses preaching, the preaching at Sunday Mass. So uh, applying the scriptures to people's lives, and also helping with things like RCIA or CCD, training catechists. And then finally, the king role, I think, does have a lot to do with the administration, just the practical things of a parish, of making sure that everyone has what they need to serve and to minister. I guess administration probably would sum that up.
I gotcha. So another thing that we talked about, over the loud music at the wedding and crazy people dancing, and I don't dance because I'm large and white and it's awkward. But one thing that I like asking people in general, because I shared this a little bit with you, is I think so many people talk about prayer, whether from the pulpit or in talks at conferences or on Catholic radio or whatever. Talk about, this is what prayer is. You should have a prayer life. Increase your prayer life. And like, I hear those prayers or I hear those talks. I'm like, yes, I'm going to go pray. And then I go sit down to pray and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Right. So I would like to ask you, just, not everybody's going to be a priest. Not everybody's going to have the same amount of prayer, but I do want to get a feel for what you do. What your order, the Brothers of the Beloved Disciple. There it was. I stuttered while saying it. I was trying not to do it, but I did it. So, what does your daily prayer life look like, and how do you go about that? Just to kind of give us an idea of what priests do.
So, as members of a religious order, we pray the divine office, which is also called the Liturgy of the Hours, at least 3 times a day. The priests pray 5 times a day, and that is mainly the Psalms and some readings and some intercessions. We also have Mass every day. We have Eucharistic adoration together for about an hour once a week. And then just for our personal prayer lives, we are expected to have at least an hour of prayer on our own each day, of mental prayer. So the other prayers that we do are much more, you could call them vocal prayers. They're reciting prayers that have been written by others, whereas mental prayer is more about speaking to God in your own words. And what I found helpful, I definitely wouldn't consider myself to be an expert at prayer. Prayer is difficult, I think, no matter who you are. But what's helped me is to have a plan for what I'm going to be praying about before I enter the chapel or before I sit down to pray. Because you're right, if you just sit down and say, okay, now I'm going to pray, but you have no idea what you're going to pray about, or no plan, or no maybe prayer guides to help you, or nothing to recite or nothing to read to kind of get you going, then it is very difficult to just start praying. So I would say definitely have some kind of plan or some kind of routine to help you get into the spirit of prayer. Praise and worship music for me is very helpful. So just pull out a guitar and play, or just play something off of YouTube, can really get me into the spirit of prayer. I think that probably helps a lot of people.
The wonders of modern technology. Just whip out YouTube and prayer. It will help you.
Yeah.
And I am so intrigued by this, because a lot of times we want to set the bar at a certain amount. For some people it's 10 minutes a day, for some people it's 30, for some it's an hour, whatever it is. But I do often feel like in these times of mental prayer, I just get lost, or my mind's wandering, and those types of things. So a lot of times I do kind of what you were saying, and I will pray through a song or lyrics of a song, or I'll use some of these guided prayers like the Liturgy Hours, like you were mentioning. So all of our prayer might not look like yours, but hearing about these things and talking about these things, I think will spark people's ideas on what they can do to pray. So the last thing I want to talk about here in the last minute or so that we have is, you obviously are, have been studying and preparing to be a priest for a long time. It's going to happen very soon, God willing. We're excited for that. So what would be your advice for people interested in the priesthood?
I would definitely say pray every day about it. For me, I really wasn't sure about my call until I committed to praying every single day for several months straight, asking God to show me his plan. Also, I think reading about the lives of the saints is very helpful to see how they lived, how they made a total gift of themselves to God. Having a spiritual director is really important, to have someone you can bounce ideas off and help you discern. And then finally, just go visit a religious community, or go talk to a vocations director in your diocese. If you were trying to get married, but you never go out to meet people, you're probably never going to meet your future spouse. In the same way, if you're thinking about the priesthood, you got to go meet people who might be able to help you with that discernment.
Brother Sean, I really appreciate your time. I thank you for coming on. It really has been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
All right, guys. I hope you guys really enjoyed and got something out of that interview with Brother Sean. He's an amazing man. If you know somebody who is interested in the priesthood, share this episode with them. He's a great man. He can be really a tool for God to use to help people join this great leadership position within the church. So we'll be right back for our final segment and answering some more of our listener questions. All right, we are back for our final segment of Forte Catholic for the evening. If you're just joining us, I got a bunch of listener questions from you guys on Facebook and Twitter, that sort of thing. Love hearing from the community, and so I'm going to be answering a few more of your questions here this evening in this segment. So before we do, I want to talk a little bit about a community that we have on patreon.com/Forte Catholic. So I just put up a ton of new content, exclusive content that has not aired live on the air. It's just for our Forte Catholic community on Patreon. So what Patreon is a way to support podcasters, support artists, that sort of thing. There's a ton of great content on there. Obviously, mine is the best. So, yeah, that's my humble saying for today. I would absolutely love it if you guys would, if you like the show and you want to help us out. We do this show for free out of the love of our hearts, from the depths of our being. We come and hang out here every Tuesday night, sometimes on Mondays to pre-record all these sorts of things. We come and hang out, edit the show, put it all out. I pay some money to host the show and all these kinds of things. So if you can help us to at least break even and then put a little bit of money in our pockets so we can buy some food, that sort of thing. And just to really help out the show, help us grow, help us to be able to do bigger and better things. And also get some content along the way. There's some behind-the-scenes content, including a very, very exclusive interview with Pope Benedict himself. Go check it out. I may or may not be kidding, but there is an interview. If you partner with me for $2 a month, it unlocks all of that great content. $2, I mean, you can buy 4 tacos at Taco Bell or Jack in the Box or anywhere for $2. I think most of you probably lose $1 a month just by dropping change. So, just pick it up and send it my way. That'd be absolutely fantastic. Jake, our producer, is going to be abandoning me to go to college next month. So I'd love to send him off with a nice little financial gift for college. It might currently right now it's looking like you're actually going to owe me money. So
it's not abandonment per se.
Oh, you're tired of me. We all know it.
Well, a little bit, but it's been fun.
You did bring me free chicken, but I that was probably mostly Abby. Yeah, it really has been fun. So go check it out. I would love your support. Help us to continue to do this thing and not lose money along the way. So let's get to some of your questions. One question is, I don't get anything out of Mass. How do I get something out of Mass? And this is kind of a conglomeration of questions. I'm not going to call the person out, but I'll kind of call myself out. So this was about a week or so ago. I was sitting in Mass, and I realized during the offertory hymn that I was on Twitter. And I didn't even realize it. It just kind of happened. So I was in Mass, and most of the time when I'm more than half the time when I'm at Mass, I'm doing the music. So I have a guitar in my hand, and I'm playing guitar, and I'm singing during the offertory hymn. Every now and then, I'm just like one of you regular people, and I'm out in the congregation, just sitting there, right? And I'm sitting next to one of the people that works with me, and I'm on my phone. okay. Let's backtrack a little bit. I was taking notes during the homily on my phone because there was some of the things that I wanted to share on the air, that sort of thing. Some things to go back on to help me pray. So it started off as a good thing. Then I realized I was on Twitter, and I was like, okay, should I tweet about being on my phone during Mass? And I was like, no, I'll wait till after Mass. So after Mass, I tweeted this out. If you want to follow me on Twitter, get involved at Taylor Schroll, TaylorSchroll. I said, I put out a poll. You can do like voting polls where people can click an answer anonymously, right? So I said, are you a sinner like me and treat the offertory hymn like the intermission of Mass? I.e., check your phone, go get water, go to the bathroom, zone out. Because I knew before I even put this poll out that I'm not alone in this. People check their phone. I mean, some people check their phone during the Eucharistic prayer. Like, okay, there's a line. I'm not going to cross that one. So I have on occasion pulled out my phone during the offertory hymn. Sometimes it's the hymn's fault. I'm going to blame the hymn. I'm just kidding. Sometimes it's on me. But this hymn was a little difficult. Let's just say it that way. But I mean, as a parent, you all know that like sometimes your kids need a break. You'll take them out to go to the bathroom, take them out for water, or like people are just sitting there. Like you're not on your phone because you're like, I would never have my phone out in Mass, but you're zoned out and you're glazed over. So you might as well be on your phone, right? So I put this poll out just to kind of get a pulse of people. And I got 16 votes, which is a good amount, What do you Jake, what do you think the percentage was? Yes and no. Are you a sinner like me and treat the offertory hymn like intermission of Mass?
I think that 12% said not a sinner, and 88% said sinner.
All right, Abby, do you have a mic? We can ask you. What do you think?
I'm gonna go with a little bit higher of a number and say that people more like 95% of people said yes, and 5% said no.
So y'all are almost the opposite of each other. You said more people saying no, right?
88% sinner.
Oh, 88% sinner.
Yeah.
You said
I think that
90.
it's just a little bit higher only because I relate so much. So.
Okay. So it was actually funny because it was closer to 50-50. Really? Yeah. So more people. Wow. Apparently I have really holy Twitter followers, which might be why I don't have that many followers. But I might have the only people holy on Twitter following me. But 56% of people said yes. And I even put like the little demon head next to yes and then the little angel head next to no. It was great. So 56% of people are like me. And I thought that was really interesting. It was pretty close. I kind of figured it would be 50-50. And this brought about some hilarious conversation, both on Twitter and like in the office, and people that would see me do this like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you would do that. I thought you were a good Catholic. I was like, have you ever heard me talk? Like, I'm all right, But I'm always laughing when we talk about that because St. Paul's like, I'm the sinner of sinners. I'm the worst. And then a couple chapters later, he's like, I'm a leader of Christ. Do what I do. And I'm just like, that's the kind of leader I want to be. I'm like, I want to be honest and let you know I'm a sinner. I open my phone up during the offertory hymn. But I'm also like striving to be closer to Christ, and I want to help myself and you guys grow in your relationship with God. So some of these conversations are hilarious, and I had a lot of people judging me in my office because there's a lot of really holy people in the office where I work. But a lot of people were like, oh yeah, I'm totally with you on the sinner side. I thought this was great too. One of my friends, one of my Twitter friends who actually came on the show way back in the day, Mr. Lex Lutheran, who's our Lutheran friend, the only non-Catholic, I think the only non-Catholic guest we've had on the show. We've got another one coming up soon, but he said conviction just set in. Thanks a lot. ... and then pal in uppercase, so he's like he's not happy with me. So he's not calling me a pal, right? But when conviction sets in, it's that that he was in my camp. So, and then another guy who has been on the show, Dean Willett, he said, check phone, never. Get water, my kids. Zone out. Well, I did think about the track training week schedule for my kids this week. So yeah, zone out. So I am not alone. And some of you people who think you're holier than me, you're probably right, but not so much in this situation. So this leads into our conversation of, the common saying of, I don't get anything out of Mass. So the first thing we have to realize is you bear some of the responsibility of whether you get something out of Mass or anything out of Mass. You bear some of that responsibility. Not all of it. Like, it is the priest's job to be a good priest. It's the music minister's job to be a good, not a good priest. That'd be weird. I mean, I guess the priest could be the music minister. It's the musician's job to have good music that leads people into prayer. It's the lector's job to read loud and clear. Those types of things. But we share this with kids a lot in youth ministry, about retreats or about youth nights. What you put in is relative to what you're going to get out. So you might have heard this analogy before, and if you've heard it, I'm not going to apologize, because you probably needed to hear it again, because a lot of times we need to get back to the basics of things and to just refocus with things that we might have heard before. It's like a bank. So if I go to the bank, and believe me, I've tried to do stuff like this. If I go into the bank and I have $100 in my bank account and I try to withdraw $200, it doesn't work. I've tried. It just doesn't work. And and looking at it in a different way, if you put money into a bank and it's going to grow interest, the more money you put on, the more interest is going to grow. The more that money is going to grow. So it's a similar thing for us. It's like, okay, if we want to grow closer to God, if we want to quote unquote get something out of Mass, we have to put something in. We have to, Taylor Schroll, put our phones away. We have to not allow these things to distract us. We have to acknowledge these natural things, the natural inclination to pull out our phones, because we're millennials and we live in this day and age where any awkward time or any time where we're bored for 3 seconds, we pull out our phone. We have to acknowledge that and be like, okay, if I really want to dive into this Mass and grow closer to God, I might need to put it out of my reach or, get some discipline. Yeah, again, I'm talking to myself. But okay, it's what you get out of Mass is not fully determinate on how good the homily is or how good the music is or if they played your favorite songs. Our goal should be, if we go to a Mass where the homily was absolutely terrible and we couldn't understand what he was saying and the music was from a generation we can't stand and the singer was singing in like 3 different keys every song, we should still be able to quote unquote get something out of Mass, which really what we mean is like growing closer to God in that Mass. That part is up to us. Now, and here's another thing. If you don't like, if you don't like the preaching and that's your priest, there's not much you can do about that. But if you don't like the music and you can sing, get up there and sing, girl. You can do it. Help out. And how can you, if you're sitting in that situation and the Mass you go to is not the most exciting thing in the world, how could you help that situation along? And then the last thing that I'll say on this is, what do you get out of Mass? What I get out of Mass is the one thing that has kept me Catholic. What I receive is Jesus Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity. So even when the homily's terrible, even when I know the music is going to be bad, I know that when I go to Mass, I get to receive Jesus, the God of the universe, into my body. That's ridiculous. We so often forget how amazing that is. And so we're like, oh, I didn't get anything out. What do you mean you didn't get anything? You got all power in heaven and earth into your stomach. That's amazing. You can tell I'm not passionate about this at all. So just to kind of switch gears, our next set of questions, I'm only going to get to a couple of them today. But Brian Baudouin, I think I said that wrong, but he's from Southern Louisiana. He's a guy we just hired, good friend of mine. I met him a few months ago at a retreat I was leading worship at. He asked the tough question. of me. Boxers or briefs? Here's the deal. Anytime you ask a Catholic question, should we love God or should we love our neighbor? What is more important, Jesus? He says, yes, both. I wear boxer briefs. So like a combination of the two. Most of them I wear Hanes boxer briefs. That's just for you. And a lot of times it's like those sliders from Under Armour. So there you go. A lot of you are laughing, and there are like 3 little old ladies that are listening on. This is Catholic radio? What is happening? But then he didn't think I would actually answer that question on the air. But one of his real questions that I'll get to today is where should people get started if they want to learn how to defend their faith? So I have a couple of ways to do that. But before we even do that, I want to kind of address this term defending of the faith, because it can be used in some really good ways. There's a great Defending the Faith conference. A lot of great Catholic conferences or Catholic radio talk about defending the faith. One of the best quotes that I've heard, though, and I should have looked it up, but I didn't. You can look it up and let me know. Let me know in the comment section or on Twitter later. But the Catholic faith is like a lion. It doesn't need to be defended. It just needs to be let loose. So like a lion really doesn't need all that much defense. But if you have the key to the cage and you want him to be able to defend himself, just let him out of the cage, right? So Jesus is the Lion of Judah. He could fend for himself. He defeated this thing called death. Have you heard of it? Like he can handle himself. So I think so often we come into defending the faith as like a combative thing, where it's like, oh, I'm going to win people over by having all this knowledge. But really, the biggest thing that's going to do, and we're going to be talking about this in next week's episode with Trent Horn from Catholic Answers, great apologist and speaker and author, talking about his new book. We're going to tackle this next week, but really, like, it is helpful for us to know the faith. And so the practical things, how do we learn this? Catholic radio, podcasts, that sort of thing. Finding stuff from Catholic Answers, listening to this show, Catholic Man Show, Catching Foxes, Lena Rulli, like all these great Catholic speakers, that sort of thing. Jen Fulwiler, I'm going to be on her show tomorrow. So if you have SiriusXM, check that out tomorrow. It's like at 1 or 2 o'clock or something like that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Catholic Answers. Like when I was in college trying to answer questions, that I lived on Catholic Answers. People would ask me tough questions where I needed to defend what I believed, right? To be able to give an answer for the truth, for the love that I feel for God and His church. Check out Catholic Answers. And then for apologetics wise, I have a cheat sheet that I'll post with this episode on fortecatholic.com/radio on this episode. So check it out. Guys, thanks for being with me today. See ya!